Welcome to Moonlit Whispers, a place where the world slows down and stories drift gently through the quiet night. So find a soft spot to rest, let your shoulders relax, and take a deep, unhurried breath. Tonight, we'll wander to a small English village, to a stone cottage, and a tiny bakery known for its warm vanilla scent and butter yellow cupcakes. This is a day at the Primrose Bakery, a calm journey through flour, sugar, and soft golden light. Let the day unfold gently and allow each sound, each detail, to carry you towards stillness and rest. In the small, willow-lined village of Marlowmere, the mornings had a way of beginning softly. Mist curled along the cobblestone lanes, wrapping itself around the hedges and garden gates. Lingering like a secret, the dawn had whispered. At the edge of the village stood a stone cottage, its walls a patchwork of time-worn gray and honeyed beige. The roof brushed with moss that gleamed when it rained. Beside it, almost leaning shoulder to shoulder, was the Primrose Bakery, a quaint little shop with cream-painted windows, a brass bell above the door, and the faintest scent of vanilla and sugar drifting through the air even before sunrise. Inside the cottage, Rosie Harland stirred awake to the low hum of the kettle. She had always left it on the timer, so the water would be ready by the time she padded into the kitchen. The soft creak of the floorboards and the sigh of the kettle marked the start of her day. As familiar as the warmth of her first cup of tea, her mornings were quiet. She liked it that way, the silence before the village stirred, while the sky still blushed pale pink and lilac. Rosie would pull on her cardigan and step out into the garden that connected her cottage to the bakery. The path was lined with primroses, the namesake of her little shop. And even when their blooms had faded for the season, she kept their leaves tidy, believing that care in itself had its own beauty. She paused at the back door of the bakery, key in hand, and smiled to herself at the faint scent that still lingered from yesterday's bakes. A mixture of sugar, butter, and a hint of lemon zest. It was a scent that had become part of her life, like the tick of the old wall clock or the sound of the oven door closing. Rosie flicked on the lights, and the bakery glowed to life. The wooden countertops gleamed under the warm bulbs. Bags of flour were stacked neatly by the wall, and rows of pastel mixing bowls waited on the shelf above the long work table. The oven, a sturdy old cast iron range she'd named Mabel, gave a soft click as it began to preheat. This was the moment Rosie loved most. The stillness before the batter was mixed, before the rhythm of the day began. She moved with slow precision, measuring flour, softening butter, sifting sugar. The kitchen filled with small, comforting sounds. The whisk tapping against the bowl, the low whir of the mixer, the steady beat of her movements. The recipe she started with every morning was always the same. Vanilla cupcakes with buttercream frosting. They were the bakery's pride, soft, golden, and topped with butter yellow icing, and a scattering of colorful sprinkles that glimmered like confetti in the sun. Somehow, they captured the essence of comfort, familiar and warm, with a sweetness that lingered long after the last bite. As the cupcakes baked, the scent spread slowly through the air, warm vanilla, mingling with the faint chill of morning dew. Outside, the village began to stir. Birds called softly from the rooftops. A milk van rattled past, and the first few steps of passers-by echoed down the lane. Rosie unlocked the front door of the bakery, flipping the sign to open. Though she knew her first customers wouldn't arrive for another half hour, she liked having that quiet in-between time when the cupcakes cooled on the racks and the glass display case gleamed, waiting to be filled. She brewed a second cup of tea and stood by the window, looking out toward the lane. From here, she could see the ivy-covered wall of the old post office and the faint plume of smoke rising from a chimney across the way. The world felt hushed and kind in these hours. By 8:30, the first regulars appeared. Mr. Bennett, the retired schoolteacher, came in for his usual black coffee and a single cupcake, always chosen from the corner of the tray. He said those ones tasted best because they'd had time to think. Then came Elsie and May, two sisters who'd been friends of Rosie's late mother. They came every Tuesday and Thursday for tea and gossip, their laughter filling the little shop like sunlight. The bakery door opened and closed gently throughout the morning, the brass bell giving its cheerful ring each time. Rosie moved through it all with quiet rhythm, serving, smiling, wiping down the counter. Each small act felt meditative, almost like a prayer, a ritual of care and calm. The cupcakes glowed softly under the glass case, their frosting peaks smooth and swirled just so. Each was topped with a few colorful sprinkles, red, blue, and green, scattered as if by a joyful hand. Children would often press their faces against the glass, eyes wide, deciding which one looked the happiest. By late morning, the air grew rich with the scent of freshly baked scones and shortbread. Rosie worked methodically, her sleeves rolled up, her apron dusted with flour. She liked the balance of precision and intuition that baking required. The way recipes had rules, yet every batch carried its own quiet uniqueness. A touch more cream, a minute less in the oven, small details, that only years of gentle observation could teach. Around noon, the soft murmur of customers gave way to the slower lull of midday. Sunlight poured through the front window, painting golden squares across the floorboards. The bell rang less often now. The village had retreated for lunch, for naps, for quiet work behind closed doors. Rosie took this time for herself. She filled a plate with one of the cupcakes, always from the middle of the tray, and carried it to the bench just outside her cottage door. The air was mild, with a faint breeze carrying the scent of roses from the neighbor's garden. She sat quietly, the cupcake balanced on a small china plate, and watched as the sunlight played across the primroses along the path. She thought about how her days had begun to follow a rhythm of their own, soft, unhurried, but deeply full. There was something about tending to a bakery that mirrored life itself. A little bit of patience, a dash of warmth, and the joy of watching something rise. From where she sat, she could hear the faint hum of the bakery's oven, the whisper of the village beyond, and somewhere in the distance, the low toll of the church bell marking noon. She smiled, brushing a crumb from her lap, and took a slow sip of tea, perfectly brewed, perfectly simple. The hours between noon and 2 drifted by gently. A slow current of quiet, punctuated by the sound of the kettle, the soft clink of teacups, and the distant rustle of leaves. It was the still heart of the day, when time itself seemed to nap, and Rosie was content to let it. By mid-afternoon, the Primrose Bakery began to hum once again. The village had slowly returned from its lunch hours, and the sun now poured in through the cream-painted windows at a softer, golden angle. Shadows of the window frames stretched across the wooden floorboards, dancing faintly as the light shifted. Rosie moved between the work tables with quiet grace, checking the racks of cupcakes cooling on wire trays, brushing off a stray sprinkle here, nudging a frosting swirl into perfect form there. It was in these small gestures, almost imperceptible, that the magic of the bakery lived. Customers might see the cupcakes gleaming in the case, but it was the care in every step that made them special. The door opened with its familiar chime, and a little boy peered inside, tugging gently at his mother's coat. Rosie smiled warmly at him, the corners of her eyes crinkling, and held out a tray of miniature vanilla cupcakes, just enough for his small hands. He selected one with great deliberation, and the joy that lit his face as he bit into the soft, sweet cake made Rosie's heart feel full. Throughout the afternoon, a gentle rhythm flowed through the bakery, the soft scratch of a pen, as Mrs. Latham filled out her order for the weekly pastries. the low murmur of two friends seated in the corner, sharing tea and quiet conversation, the occasional creak of the oven door as Rosie checked on the next batch of cupcakes, letting the rich vanilla scent fill the air. Sometimes she paused and closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the warmth of the sun and the comforting aroma of baked sugar settle around her. The bakery was more than a shop. It was a space of quiet joy, a sanctuary of calm in the village, and Rosie knew it. By 4 o'clock, the light in the village began to soften, turning from gold to a gentle amber. Rosie prepared the display for the final customers of the day. She rotated the cupcakes, arranging them so that every swirl of buttercream caught the light just right. She added a few fresh sprinkles to brighten the peaks, knowing that beauty, even in small doses, made a difference. A soft wind whispered through the slightly open window, carrying the scent of primroses, damp earth, and the faintest hint of evening rain from the hills beyond. Rosie paused, inhaling deeply, and allowed herself a moment of stillness. It was a kind of meditation, the rhythm of the day slowing, like the gentle setting of the sun. Customers trickled in one last time, a couple seeking a sweet treat for tea, a young woman stopping by to pick up cupcakes for a neighbor, a pair of children pressing their noses to the glass once more. Each interaction was soft and unhurried, a quiet sharing of happiness and calm. Rosie moved through it all with the same gentle care she had shown since morning, her movements almost like a dance, soft, deliberate, and comforting. As the final customer departed, the bell above the door rang a last, delicate chime. Rosie turned the sign to closed, and the bakery fell into a hush, the kind of silence that felt warm rather than empty. The ovens cooled slowly, giving off a final wave of buttery, sugary aroma that lingered in the air like a sigh. She cleaned the countertops with soft, circular motions, wiping away flour, sugar, and crumbs. She stacked the mixing bowls and utensils neatly, so that the next morning would greet her with order and calm. The display case, now empty of cupcakes, gleamed softly in the waning light, like a quiet promise of tomorrow. Rosie locked the bakery door and stepped back onto the small stone path that connected the shop to her cottage. The primroses along the path had been bathed in afternoon rain, their petals shining faintly in the golden light. She paused for a moment, letting the sounds of the village reach her, distant church bells, the rustle of leaves, a dog barking softly in the distance. Inside the cottage, Rosie prepared her evening tea and set a small plate with a single cupcake, the first she had baked that morning. She placed it on the windowsill beside a small lamp, the soft glow illuminating the butter yellow frosting and the tiny, colorful sprinkles. It was her quiet celebration of the day, a moment of gratitude for the rhythm, the warmth, and the gentle life she had nurtured. The sun lowered behind the hills, casting long, soft shadows across the village and the garden. Rosie drew the curtains and lit a small fire in the hearth, the room filled with a gentle warmth, the kind that made the corners of the walls seem softer, the shadows more comforting. She settled into her favorite chair, tea in hand, cupcake within reach, and let the day's quiet achievements wash over her. Outside, the Primrose Bakery stood silent, but alive in memory. The scent of vanilla and sugar lingering in the cool evening air. It waited for tomorrow, for the gentle rhythm to begin again, for new mornings, soft customers, and the calm, comforting routine that Rosie cherished so deeply. As night deepened, the village quieted. Stars blinked faintly through the cottage window, and a soft breeze carried the scent of primroses across the path. Rosie sipped her tea slowly, letting the sweetness of the cupcake linger, and finally placed her cup aside. The fire flickered gently, casting long shadows across the room, and she felt the weight of the day settle into a gentle, satisfying calm. She rose, tidied the small things, and climbed the staircase to her bedroom. The cottage was silent now, save for the faint hum of the night outside, the soft call of an owl, the whisper of leaves, the distant bark of a dog. Rosie pulled the quilt up around her, the smell of lavender from the small sachets on her bedside table mingling with the lingering scent of sugar and vanilla. And as she drifted into sleep, the day at the Primrose Bakery seemed to linger in the room, soft and warm, like a gentle lullaby. The cupcakes would rest in the display case, waiting to greet tomorrow's sun and the gentle rhythm of another day. Full of quiet joy, soft scents, and the gentle heart of a baker named Rosie, the world outside faded into calm, and all was still, sweet, and serene.